And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome to Open Connection. I'm your host, Robert Pictou. Honoring Homeland Weaving Conference took place at Simon Fraser University in the spring of 2009. The event, coordinated by Professor Dr. Annie Ross, was the first Indigenous Weavers Teaching Weaving Conference occurring at a post-secondary institution in Canada. Weavers from North America will be sharing their thoughts on weaving. We begin this special three-part series with Jessica Casey.
I weave because it makes me happy.
Oh, yeah.
It makes me feel closer to my grandmother. We grew up off reserve. Mm-hmm. We grew up in a little town called Egmont. It's an hour from Sechelt. Mm-hmm. We were all mixed blood people. I grew up, I call it with brown grandmothers. I didn't know anything different until I moved to Squamish. And I started working with the Squamish Nation elders about 7 years ago. My friend, who was the coordinator for the elders, she went into the longhouse, and so she said, "Jess, you have to take my place when I'm gone." So I did. And, and they were doing weaving, and I was watching. And they'd never done weaving before. They just had, none of these elders had woven, and I was watching them, and we went home that week in Egmont. And my brother, we were building a house for my parents, and my brother had these 2-cedar poles from our property. And I said, "Oh, Tom, what are you doing with those?" And he goes, "Oh, I'm going to put them in the house." And I said, "Can I have the cedar?" And he goes, "Well, you need to strip them." And I said, "Oh, no problem, I can do that, because I can, I'm like that, I can do that." Anyway, it was February, and the bark was stuck on there, and I went home with little pieces of bark. Yeah. And I soaked them and soaked them and soaked them in hot water, and I got the outer bark off, and I went to the library and I got books, and I started weaving, and I can't explain the feeling that it gave me. It filled me up, and it made me, it just opened these floodgates of wanting to learn everything. And I in my house, we have every book possible on weaving. I go to museums and I look in the cases, and sometimes I really have a good look to see the bottom of how they started it. And I just learned like that, and I weave every day. There's always cedar in our house somewhere, soaking in the bathtub or taken out, put on the floor, put back in the bathtub, in the kitchen sink, and it just makes me happy. And when we were talking about who to teach and who not to teach, there's a lot of people that grew up not knowing where they come from. And I'll teach you. I think that if you're going to go out and you're going to try and make a lot of money, well, most cases it doesn't work because you don't have that passion in you for the weaving. You're just trying to make some money really quickly, and it shows in your work and it shows in you. I think if you want to weave and you do it just for the feeling you get from it, just from the smell of it. When I go out with my family or my brothers, my husband, and my kids, and we gather cedar, and I feel rich. It's like we've won the lotto when you come up with that bark over your shoulder, and I'm happy. And they all think I'm crazy, and I'm happy. And I look at it hanging up drying, and I love the colors. I love the mahogany, a little bit of that bark still stuck on it, and I just love everything about it. And when I teach weaving, and you get maybe one weaver out of 7 or 10 people that you're teaching, people come and they'll make a hat, and that's it, they'll be done. And you'll see that's about 2 hands wide, and that's as wide as we'll take off this tree. Otherwise all the sap runs out of it and the tree will die.
I'm trying to go up higher so you have a good running start when it starts peeling.
Isn't that the most beautiful sound?
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Thanks for staying with us. Cedar is a well-known symbol of Northwest Coast. For thousands of years, coastal First Nations in British Columbia have a versatile wood in many aspects of their lives. Not only cedar is a key to natural resource and protection of mineral goods, the tree also plays an integral role in the spiritual beliefs and ceremonial life of coastal First Nations. Let us return to the conversation with Jessica.
This other lady I taught, Pam, she's 57 years old, and she couldn't get the hang of twining, which is hard in the beginning. And she said, I'm just going to do it my way. And I said, okay, it's been a frustrating day for a lot of people. And I said, all right. And so she took it home and she came back the next day. She said, okay, Jessica, I'm ready. She goes, I went home and I had a cry in the bathroom and I came out and I took it apart because in my head I could hear you saying, take it apart, take it apart. And I took it apart. She goes, and look at it. And it was beautiful. It was beautiful just because she took that time. And she's one of the weavers now we have in Sechelt that weaves just for the happiness of it. Just she wove things for her son's wedding, and I think she got a little carried away, and he was like, Mom, stop with the weaving. But they had all this regalia for the wedding. But she got it. She got the whole meaning of weaving. It just poured out of her, and that's what I weave for, to see that come out in people, that love for it, and finding something from your past. There's a book written on our family. I come from the Sylvie family, and my friend Jean Barman wrote a book on us. And there's a picture of my great aunt Mary, and she did the root baskets. And she's standing, and they're all piled really high, and there's an M on one. And I thought, oh, look, there was a weaver in our family. The Squamish Nation elders had told me that somewhere back there it's in you, you just don't know yet. And because my grandmother didn't talk very much about that, we didn't know. And there was this beautiful photo of her, our weaver, just was standing proudly by her baskets. And, that's why I weave. I can't explain it. It fills me up. It makes me happy. And I don't know, maybe it was something I was searching for all those years. I know.
Kind of brings you home, kind of.
It does, because when you grow up in mixed blood families, like when we grew up in our community, we all knew where we came from. We all basically came from the same people. And I knew where I belonged, but when I went out into the world and I wasn't protected anymore by all those aunts and uncles and cousins, because, oh my gosh, they protect you, it was hard, and I think I felt lost for a long time. And when some weavers talk about, this is ours, I think, yes, that is yours, but if you hold on to it too tightly and you don't share it with anybody, then it's going, so many aspects of weaving have already died. Some people, they don't know how to do their own patterns. I can look at something and I can figure it out. And if I can teach you, even though you're Haida or something else, to weave your own pattern, then let the weavers do it. I don't want to take it from you. I don't want to sell it. But if I can figure it out and teach these people, then I don't know. I just think then it'll all be okay in the end, and it won't die, because some people hold on to it so tightly they don't want to share. And then it'll get lost somewhere along the way, and it's coming back with a vengeance now. Look at it out there. People are happy to be weaving, but. So when the bark separates beautifully like this, the outer bark off the inner bark, you know that this is the perfect time of the year to be gathering. If the sap wasn't running this nice, it would stick. You would have a really hard time taking it off, and sometimes you'd have to chip away with your knife. When you're a beginner, you learn after the first year or so that, hey, I don't want to spend all my time doing that, so I'll wait another couple of weeks to make sure the sap's running and there's not any pitch left in the inner bark. If it's having a hard time coming off, the outer bark having a hard time coming off, then often you'll have pitchy inner bark. And then with this cedar, we're going to make some hats and mats and baskets of all different shapes and sizes, and little woven frogs and rope regalia. We do a lot of regalia, cedar capes. And sometimes you can spin your cedar bark into your wool as well for your Salish weaving.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome back to Open Connection. Born in 1944 in Bellingham, he grew up in poverty on the Lumney Reservation in Northwest Washington. He attended a nearby high school until disagreements with the teachers over a culturally insensitive curriculum led him to drop out. Federal Indian officials shipped him to a boarding school for the arts in New Mexico, where he grew curious about his own nation's artistic practices. Let us return to conversation with Bill James.
Why do I weave? Well, I always tell my students, weaving is the fabric of our lives that weaves us together. And this helps us bond with each other. This keeps our heritage, keeps our culture, keeps our people alive, keeps our way of life alive. And this is really important because there are many factors that go into keeping our history, culture, language, values, everything alive. Like I say, I tell my students, we're weaving together the fabric of our lives. Weaving our people together, weaving our history together. We're trying to protect our culture, our history, our values, our teachings, and our way of life to show our identity as to who we are as a people. Everybody's always trying to take away what we know, our history, our cultural, intellectual properties. As a teacher, I encounter a lot of people wanting to know what I know. The plants, the medicines, the foods, everything that they want to know because they seem to think that we have the knowledge to survive, and that's what we have. And they want to know how to survive, because the time is coming where there's not going to be very much food left on the earth. The farms are going under, the farms are freezing, the farmers are being done away with. Animals are getting polluted with whatever they feed them, and we know all the traditional foods. And if we don't continue to know who we are and keeping these strands of life together, we might fall apart and break. So we have to keep strong and keep weaving ourselves together and keep our ties tight as to who we are as a people. So I weave as part of that. I teach language as part of that. But weaving has always been part of my life. I went to school in Santa Fe Indian Art School, IA in Santa Fe. I went to school with Sobier, Bruce Miller. Excuse me. We wove side by side. We wove side by side in school. And so we knew each other, very close friends. And the thing that I wanted to say is that Sobier would be so proud to see those weavings hanging here today. Just like I'm so proud to see those weavings hanging here today. We're still alive. We're still here. You're on camera again. And we're still here. it just does my heart good to think back of when we sat there with our Salish weaving, you know, and we talked about our own culture and our own history and our own people and what we should do to protect our way of life. That's how all of this got started in the Northwest here. And he taught many, many people. And he went the weaving style for the most part, and then I went the basketry way. Okay, so now I teach weaving and baskets, either way, you know. But the importance of the swakwash, you know, the blanket. A swakwash, that's what it's called, the blanket. And the people have to know what it really meant to our identity. You see all the old pictures of all the old people have their blankets on. Okay. Blankets, because where we live it gets cold. You know, where we live it gets cold. And we had to have good blankets. That's our identity, that's who we are. So, but
I think a lot of the value of the engagement in and looking at these pieces for us ties back to this politicization, and it does continue to go back to the land.
These are the artists that we have a legacy with. We are connected to them.
And I've started to see these ancestral treasures. I've started to see that in a way our ancestors put a string on these old pieces so that no matter where they wound up in the world, we would reconnect with them.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
In his youth, James had learned the land where the Lummi lived along the Salish Sea was sacred, that it provided substances for his people. His elders had taught him that it is duty to protect the land. In this final segment of Open Connection, Bill shares how he approaches teaching.
as I teach young people today, I finally retired a few years ago. And as I teach young people today, I teach the ones that really want to learn. I'll say, well, when you're ready, I'm ready. Monday morning is free for me, and they're there Monday morning. I'll bend over backwards to help them. Thursday morning, I'm free. They're there Thursday morning. I'll bend over backwards to help them. You know, because they're willing to learn. Not the ones just say, I should learn how to do that sometime. You know, and but sometimes you have to be a little bit selective who you teach. You know, you can weed out the ones that really want to know, you know, how to do it, and take it from there. And just like the stories and the legends, how important those things are to our identity. And but I got a tickle for some reason, but I think we're going to make progress in the future with our weaving. We have a hard time getting the mountain goat's wool today to make the real blanket. And that's really hard to do. I have one with me right now that we made, but it's really hard to get that material. So and addressing the issue of the little squamite, the little skacha was his name. The little skacha was a little woolly dog. And he is now extinct, okay? And that word kind of has a hard time, it kind of sticks in my throat, extinct. Now, you have to think about it, how did he become extinct? Okay. Our people raised woolly dogs like they raised sheep. They had a place for them. They bred them for their wool. Okay. Now, they put them on a little island and they raised them there. Okay. So along comes the foreigners. They come, they bring their little animals, their dogs. Okay. They mix. It's not really extinct as the word, it lost its purebred. That's what happened. It wasn't our fault, it was brought to us. So we can't take the blame for making the little dog go extinct, you know. So a lot of people feel like somehow we had a hand in losing those little dogs, but it wasn't our fault. Just like a lot of other things, it wasn't our fault. But I just have to take this time to thank the coordinators. There were many coordinators for doing this conference, for bringing together the people to share their thoughts and share their teachings, and again, weaving the fabric of our lives together with who we are as a people. Because like I was saying earlier, I feel so comfortable here, even though I'm from what you call the States. I'm from the States, just less than 50 miles from here. And but my mother's people come from Penalakat, from Cooper. So actually, I'm still part of the people here. So people run down Canadians, they run down Americans. I said, well, I'm both, actually. You know, I'm both, because I didn't draw that line. You see, so. But again, thank you to all the people that did all this work, because it was a beautiful project. Thank the government for providing the university, for providing all of the funding for all of this to keep us together, because that needs to be said to them. They need to be thanked for helping our people, carrying on the traditions and the values of our people. So I'll end with that.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Open Connection. The greatest distance in the existence of man is not from here to there, but the connection from his mind to his heart. If we can conquer that distance, we can soar like an eagle and realize our immensity within. I'm Robert Pictou.